Hey, and welcome into the Big Ten Huddle. I'm JR. We are presented and brought to you by FanDuel. Going to be going over some FanDuel odds in this episode, but primarily talking about the performance tiers of how the Big Ten teams did in Week 9. And the first team we need to start with is Michigan. They got the win over Michigan State. It was kind of tight, kind of dicey early on, and there a little bit late into the game, it looked like Michigan State might have been able to come back, but Michigan did squash that hope that they had, and they were able to pull out the win in this one. Michigan right now on FanDuel is at plus 2,500 to win the Big Ten. It's important to know, yes, they do have two losses, but one of those losses was in the out of conference. So this Michigan team could beat Ohio State, and if Ohio State goes undefeated outside of that game, Indiana goes undefeated, you could find yourself with a Michigan-Ohio State matchup in the a Michigan-Indiana matchup in the Big Ten Championship. Not telling you to bet this, but I am saying that it's a possibility there, and some people may not be seeing it. All Michigan has to do is beat Ohio State, obviously win the rest of the games on their schedule as well, which are not super difficult matchups, so they definitely can make that happen. If they win that game against Ohio State, as they've done the past 3 years, they are definitely in the Big Ten Championship, presuming Ohio State does what they're supposed to do as well. Great opportunity for Michigan there. Could put a little bit of money on that if you want. Like I said, on FanDuel at plus 2,500. They are behind Oregon, who's at plus 1,300. If you're just going for who's going to win the conference, I would personally go with Ohio State minus 160 or Indiana plus 175, and I would parlay that with either Julian Sain or Fernando Mendoza to win the Heisman. So if you think Indiana's going to win the Big Ten, then I'd go ahead and parlay that with Fernando Mendoza. His Heisman odds, and Fernando Mendoza does have the highest Heisman odds right now on FanDuel, but pair that with plus 175 for Indiana to win the Big Ten. You got yourself a good parlay there that is actually pretty not likely. I don't say likely or unlikely, but if it does happen that Indiana wins, it's likely Fernando Mendoza wins the Heisman as well. Anyway, Michigan, let's talk about how their game went. Michigan wins 31-20. Michigan State gets the late touchdown there at the end, which made it a little bit more manageable, but overall, Michigan dominated this game. Dominated this game in the trenches, right? I mean, Michigan State obviously had opportunities to come back and everything. Bryce Underwood taking pictures with the fans at the end of the game, and he was living it up, having a good time. Really, it was the rushing game in this one for Michigan, though, as they dominated the line of scrimmage, 276 yards on the ground. Bryce Underwood was 8 of 17, 86 yards passing. Still waiting for Bryce Underwood to kind of have like that big, huge game against a big opponent. He did have a good game against Washington at home, but you really need to see it in like a huge game, right? He ran well in this one, five carries for 26 yards and 1 touchdown. Michigan State had 1 sack. Michigan 4 sacks on the day. Much better offensive line domination for Michigan. And let's be honest, this is a Michigan State team. This is exactly what they're supposed to do to them. I do have a little bit of concern that Michigan was not able to win the line, was able to have Bryce Underwood play as well as I thought he should have. So that's why Michigan is in the satisfied category for me. If you were a Michigan fan, I think you would have liked to feel a whole lot better with getting to the elite status. If Bryce Underwood maybe threw for 200 and more yards, had a touchdown or two, you might feel that way. But Bryce Underwood still coming along, still needs to get there and move along. But I think he has the skills, the talent to be able to do that. Michigan State, I have them in the questionable category, and I know some people, especially Michigan State fans who are wanting to fire Jonathan Smith right now, are going to disagree with that. But I do think it's important to kind of look at some context here. Even with Aiden Chiles struggling to throw the ball early on, they were still able to move the ball down the field. Mekhi Frazier had 14 carries for 109 yards in this game. That honestly was pretty impressive that he was able to do that. And Michigan State was, they were not able to move the ball there at the beginning of the game. Michigan goes up 10-0, but then they're able to respond at the beginning of the second quarter, get a touchdown, and they're right back in that thing. Now, at the end, Michigan State started to get closer to it, right? So you felt a little bit better about it then, but ultimately Michigan, they scored that third touchdown, really started to pull ahead, and it was kind of all over from there. So Michigan State, I find it hard you have a basically 2-score loss against your rival. I find it hard to say like it's concerning, but it's also like been concerning for this Michigan State team for some time. So I suppose you could put them in the concerning category if you really wanted to, but at this point, I think we saw a lot of the issues of what you thought you were going to see from this Michigan State team in this game. Line of scrimmage, they lost it. They did run the ball better than I thought they would have, and then Aiden Childs, it's hard for him to do anything back there when he gets his left tackle hurt in the game, gets his right tackle hurt in the game, and then also Michigan State's making dumb penalties as well. So questionable for me from Michigan State, but I could definitely understand if somebody wanted to put them in the concerning category. All right, let's go up to the elite section and see who we got up there, as Indiana played very well and got the win over UCLA. Indiana wins this game 56-6 over UCLA. Great win for Indiana, as Fernando Mendoza went 15 of 22, 168 yards, 3 touchdowns. Did have 1 pick, so you could maybe ding him a little bit there, but I would still say this was an elite game for Indiana. They had 3 sacks on the day, 7 tackles for loss. Roman Hemby, 17 carries for 81 yards, 2 touchdowns, and these Indiana wide receivers did not have the best day, but who did was E.J. Williams, showing the depth of that wide receiver room here for Indiana. Fernando Mendoza had time all day back there, as the pass blocking in this game was top notch for Indiana. He had so much time back there to just basically do whatever he wanted. The run game was also pretty good in this one, but the defense was exceptional. Great coverage downfield. Nico Iamaleava was 13 of 27, 113 yards and 2 interceptions. They could not do anything in this game because the coverage downfield was so great. And then on top of that, UCLA able to get relatively 0 pass rush on Indiana as well. That's why I have Indiana in the elite category. I have UCLA in the awful category because they didn't run the ball well. They didn't throw the ball well. They didn't play defense well. Really, there was nothing that UCLA did well in this game. Really, really concerning, really awful performance here from UCLA. At this point, if you're a UCLA fan, you're kind of like, was it all smoke and mirrors? Is this just who we are? I don't think so. I think this was more indicative of Indiana just being a wagon more than anything else. I mean, this Indiana team is just fantastic. They're so difficult to stop. And even in a game where Fernando Mendoza has the interception, right? Alberto Mendoza had an interception as well. You still can't do anything because this Indiana team does so well. Relatively no pass rush for UCLA in this game. It wasn't very good. They did do some things well. They did run the ball a little bit. They did have 88 yards on the ground, but just no consistent runner getting them any yards to be able to do that. So tough game for UCLA there, but great win for Indiana. All right, moving on to the next one. Move on to Iowa and Minnesota here. Iowa looked elite against Minnesota, getting the win 41-3. Minnesota went in there and they got spanked over the knee by Iowa. Kirk Ferentz, Mark Gronowski, the boys, the secondary, the special teams. I mean, it was everywhere. There was relatively nothing that Minnesota did in this game that you can look back on and say, oh, yeah, it was a good performance, I guess, in that area. They did get a couple sacks in this game, but those were not really indicative of anything happening. I mean, that was probably more on Mark Gronowski. And then, wow, was it even Mark Gronowski? Forgetting at this point who we even was that got sacked, but it was so non-consequential that it really didn't even mean anything for Minnesota. Minnesota was not able to run the ball. Even they were only 24 yards on the ground, but even sack-adjusted rushing yards, they only had 53 rushing yards on the day. So just not a good performance there by Minnesota. But let's talk Iowa. As Iowa was elite in this game, Mark Gronowski did have a pretty good passing day, right? 12 of 19, 135 yards, 1 touchdown pass. You can see that Reese Vanderzee coming back in this one is really helping this team, not just in the passing game, as he only had 1 catch for 29 yards for a touchdown, but as a blocker and just his presence being out there as well, a good leader for this team. So Reese Vanderzee being back, although it was only 1 catch for a touchdown, that is effective, and that is something that means something for this team. So good stuff. Reese Vanderzee being back, obviously playing in Kinnick. They had the hype. They had the hype train going, and they're going to get Oregon here after the bye week, and that's going to be a really, really good opportunity here for Iowa. If you want to really go out on a limb and get yourself a good bet, go bet on Iowa to make the college football playoffs at this point. Yes, they have 2 losses, but if they beat Oregon at Kinnick, right, then they only have at USC and at Nebraska still on the schedule. And I think if you win those games on the road, that's going to be enough to get them into the playoffs at 10-2. I think those are really hard games to win on the road, but we've seen what this team can do against Nebraska, and then we see how Iowa was able to dominate the line of scrimmage, something they were able to do in this game from the jump. The pass blocking was elite. The run blocking could have been a little bit better, I suppose. Iowa did run for 133 yards in this game. I think there could have been maybe some more holes in the run game, but overall the pass blocking was fantastic. Mark Gronowski, had a good day, had a good day throwing the ball as well, which really means something. And then Caden Wetjen was huge in this game as well. But the defense, again, for Iowa is a huge, huge factor, as it was the star of the game. Even in a game where they scored 41 points, they were the star of this game. If we look at the home team here and we go look at the stats, they had 9 tackles for loss, 4 sacks, 3 interceptions on Drake Lindsey, and it was just a really, really good game. Caden Wetjen took a punt return for a touchdown as well. So great game here for Iowa. And I'm trying to check. They did have 1 pick six. I remember the 1 pick six from Lutmer. And Lutmer being moved out to cornerback, that was a great move by Phil Parker and that coaching staff to do that. And outside of that, even though they didn't have the most pressure in this game, like I said, they still had 4 sacks. So when they did get pressure, they were able to consistent pressure. I didn't feel like there was consistent pressure from Iowa the entire game, but when they did get pressure, they capitalized on it. They had 4 sacks in this game, and a good day for Iowa there. Like I said, 9 tackles for loss as well. And Drake Lindsey, he was just seeing ghosts out there. He was having a terrible day. So elite for Iowa, awful for Minnesota. Drake Lindsey kind of went out on a limb for him here to say, hey, the guy can do it. And unfortunately, he wasn't able to get it done. I will say, redshirt freshman, what is this, like his 8th start of his career. Like, this guy, he still has so much potential. He can still do so much, but when Iowa just blanks you right out of the gate like that, it's really, really hard to come back. And so I do have some sympathy there. Iowa scored on the first 3 drives in the first quarter for them, able to go up by quite a bit. And then in the second half, they got a field goal and a touchdown. But the interceptions, the 3 and outs, I mean, they had 3 of their first 4 drives for 3 and outs. The only one that wasn't, interception on the very first play of the drive. So tough stuff for Minnesota. Iowa's defense was fantastic, consistently putting their offense in good situations. And this is exactly how Iowa wants to play, right? This is exactly what they want to do, and they did a very good job of it in this one. So great stuff here from Iowa. Minnesota, back to the drawing board. Good win against Nebraska, but you're going to have to go back to the drawing board on that one. Team we had is Washington. Man, Washington looked good at home against Illinois. We'll get to Illinois here in a second, but elite game from Washington here as they were able to take down Illinois 42-25. Things got a little dicey there a little later on, right? I mean, it was Illinois went for 2 there, and it was 24 to what was that? It was 24-28. Or 25-28. So things looked a little dicey there, but Washington was able to get the touchdowns there at the end of the game, and they were able to. No. It was 25-35, I think it was. Yeah, because they went for 2 to get to 10 points, so not 28. I apologize. A lot of football I watched today, but so Brett Bielema was able to get them back and kind of have a little bit of a chance there, but there in the fourth quarter when Washington gets the touchdown, they were able to kind of seal it there. So great win here for Washington. They scored on all but 1 of their drives in this game. This is the Washington offense that we were kind of loving the most when we first saw it, right? This Illinois defense definitely has some issues. Like I said, we'll get to that here in a second, but great game from Damon Williams as he was 26 of 33, 280 yards, 4 touchdowns. Jonah Coleman, 14 rushing attempts for 75 yards. And 1 touchdown as well. Really the key for this, in my opinion, for Washington was the offensive line. You had Carver Willis and John Mills back in this game. Now, they did not play the whole game. I think they came out closer to the end there. Neither of them played over 50 snaps from what I saw or from what I counted, but a great game here for Washington. You can see what this Washington team looks like with a competent, not just competent, but with a good offensive line, and I think that's going to be huge for them as they continue on going. Illinois does not have the best defense out there, but they have a pretty good front seven. I wouldn't say it's bad. Secondary is a little suspect, so you can't just say, oh, this was a bad Washington or a bad Illinois defense that Washington did this against. Oh, that's an Illinois defense that has been good at times this season. I mean, they held USC to only 32 points in that game when they were able to get the win. So Washington comes out and in this one scores on every single drive except for one. They put up 42 points in this game. It was a fantastic game for Washington. Jonah Coleman, the dudes, Denzel Boston, 10 catches, 153 yards, one touchdown. At one point, he was kind of getting hurt there in the second half, and then he comes back, makes a huge catch to I believe it was on third down to put his team in the red zone or on the goal line, one of the two. And then after that, they were able to score. It looked like he got hurt again, but then he was back in the game. Must have just been some cramping or something like that. But great game here for Washington. They did not play like the best game on defense. 0 sacks, only 2 tackles for loss, but they were able to do enough to get it done. And I felt like Washington did do a pretty good job in most areas. I didn't think there was a single area where they were like bad and it was real concerning at. But you also take into account this is a good Illinois offense as well. Luke Altmaier, they have a trio of running backs that are pretty good as well. And they were able to hold Illinois from scoring for a good amount of time and able to kind of pull away with the lead, especially the touchdown there in the fourth quarter. So elite game for Washington. For Illinois, it was a pretty concerning game, in my opinion. Illinois did not look great in this one, and I think if you're an Illinois fan, you're pretty concerned after this one. Number one, you're not making the playoffs this year, and that was obviously a huge goal. You can still get to 10 wins, but these end of the season games against Northwestern and some other teams don't look, as for sure winnable as you thought if this defense is not going to be able to hold their own. Now, Washington has a very good offense and they put their offensive line back together, so I think that needs to be considered. It was also a road game. But if you're being an Illinois fan, you got to be honest and say this defense does not inspire a whole lot of confidence in you. Aaron Henry, he did not adjust in this game for Damon Williams. He was not able, he just was not willing to adjust. Damon Williams had 10 carries for 66 yards. He was not sacked once. And I think that was really, really troublesome for Illinois. Their leading rusher in this game was Luke Altmaier, 7 carries for 48 yards. They had 138 yards on the ground, which is pretty good, but then Luke Altmaier threw 2 interceptions as well, 22 of 34, 199 yards, 2 touchdowns. This is just not an Illinois team that's just going to lose the turnover battle and be able just to outplay you like that, right? Illinois had 2 turnovers in this game. Washington didn't have any. There are certainly teams out there that have that type of capability. Illinois is just not one of them because they're just not built that way. It doesn't make them a lesser team than anybody else, but they're just not built that way. So Illinois has to do a better job of holding on to the ball. It's a whole team thing. It's not like this is just on Luke Altmaier. It's a whole team thing. They have to do a better job keeping hold of the ball, batting down tip passes and stuff. There were some tip passes in this game that could have been picked off as well. But overall, back to the drawing board here for Illinois, especially the defense. Offense, yeah. I would not be as worried about the offense, more so about the turnovers than anything else, but definitely need to be back at the drawing board for this team on the defensive end. Till they come out with a good defensive performance, I'm thinking this is a concerning situation for the Illinois defense. Nebraska is next to get the win in the Big Ten, as I'm going to have them in the satisfied category. I am not in love with what Nebraska did in this game, but they did enough to be able to get the win, and their offense did much better in the second half. What I do love that Nebraska did in this one is they only allowed 1 sack by Northwestern. Northwestern, as we talked about in the preview of the game, had a pretty good pass rush so far this season. They did well the weeks leading up to this game. Pass rush was pretty much non-existent in this game. Only one sack for Northwestern. Dylan Raiola was pretty well protected back there, and they really leaned on the run game. As Emmett Johnson had 27 carries for 124 yards, 2 touchdowns. Dylan Raiola only threw the ball 22 times in this one, not relying on his arm as much as they have before, which I think was a smart decision. They really leaned on this Nebraska offensive line. We've seen teams do this before. The offensive line is struggling, and you say, okay, scrap all the passing and everything else. Let's just get the ball to our running back. He's the leading rusher in the Big Ten right now. I think Justice Haynes may have passed him after this one. I'll have to double check. I don't remember exactly how many yards they were in between each other. Justice Haynes had like 150. Emmett Johnson had like 124. But and it wasn't like he got all of those on one carry. The long in this one for him was 15 yards, but it was just consistent, being able to pick up yards, be able to move the ball down the field, and that's kind of what you love to see from this Nebraska team, being able to do that. That's one thing we commented on in their early win against Cincinnati, is being able to sustain drives and move the ball down the field. So Nebraska, they did let up some stuff to Northwestern's offense that I thought was a little troublesome. They gave up the big play to Caleb Komalafe, the big long run. Northwestern was like 50% on third downs in the game, but when it mattered most, they were able to get interceptions. They picked off Preston Stone twice in this one, and you did what you had to do to win the game. And this is not a Northwestern team where it's like, oh man, we only won by a touchdown. That sucks. No, Northwestern's been playing pretty good lately, so this is definitely a win that Nebraska Cornhusker fans need to be proud of. Definitely look at the strengths and the weaknesses and say, okay, these are areas, that's areas, but it's definitely going to give this team more confidence as they continue on to the end of the season. Nebraska, for all we know, could possibly make the playoffs, but they still have some tough teams, Iowa being one of them at the very end of the season, and they cannot afford any more losses if they hope to make the playoffs. They just don't have the strength of schedule to give them a whole lot of marquee wins. Iowa could possibly turn into one of those at the end of the season, but I definitely think Nebraska, they have to win out, and they have to win out big if they want to make the playoffs here to end the season. Dylan Raiola had 1 touchdown, 1 interception. Passing game left a little bit to be desired, in my opinion. But overall, the pass blocking in this one was much, much better. The run blocking was not great, but Emmett Johnson found the holes, was able to get through there, and had a good day. And the thing that I love most about this Nebraska team, I kind of harped on some of their, letting up third down conversions and stuff like that. I felt like the tackling was so much better. This is a team that struggled with tackling mightily against Minnesota and in weeks before that. But this game, very few missed tackles by my count. We'll see what PFF has to say later on, but by my count, very few missed tackles. Great game defensively, tackling for Nebraska, getting interceptions, turning Northwestern over. Northwestern looked like the better team at points during the game, but overall, Nebraska made the plays when they needed to, and they were able to get it done. Good, gritty win, and I mean, we can talk about, referees and stuff like that. And that's probably where the discussion starts with Northwestern, as Nebraska did not get called with the holding there at the end. But that's how the game goes, right? I mean, Ryan Day says it right now, and I love that he says it. He says, leave no doubt. Don't leave it in the hands of the officials. And that's easy to say when you're a team that's on the, not the team that's on the road playing in those games. I get it. But if you don't throw the interceptions that you threw in this game, if you had Joseph Hyman being able to run the ball more in this one, maybe you don't find yourself in that situation. Caleb Komalafe, good game. Griffin Wilde, only 34 yards receiving on the day. He's a guy that you need more production from, and Nebraska did a good job of being able to cover him, but Nebraska's really, really good secondary showed out in this one, as Preston Stone had been looking better, not turning the ball over as much, but 15 of 29, 159 yards and 2 interceptions on the day. Really good game for Nebraska. I'm going to say satisfied. There were some areas, like I talked about before, that I wasn't as satisfied in, so I'm not going to say elite for Nebraska, but definitely satisfied. And then Northwestern, questionable. I'm not gonna say concerning, because there was that holding there at the end, which I think could have gone either way. I probably would have. This is just me personally. I probably would have given it to Northwestern, but I don't hate that they didn't do it either. So it is what it is. All right, good game by Nebraska. Northwestern honestly had a good game, just wasn't able to pull it out. Kind of sucks, but it is what it is. Keep it up, Nebraska. Make it to the playoffs. All right, that would be awesome if you make it to the playoffs, but at least get 8 wins. That's the real goal here. All right, two teams that I have next are both in the questionable category as Oregon beats Wisconsin. Oregon was at home in this game, and they win this one 21-7 after seeing Wisconsin get blanked by Iowa, blanked by Ohio State. You're starting to think, okay, Oregon's going to come in and do the same thing. They're coming off, I believe they were coming off a bye week in this one, if I'm not mistaken. Double check that just to be sure. No, they played Rutgers last week. What am I talking about? They played Indiana Rutgers. They had a bye week before Indiana. What am I talking about? But coming off a really good game against Rutgers, where they honestly looked fantastic. I mean, they never really gave Rutgers any type of opportunity. And then in the first half in this one, Oregon just did not look good offensively. Defensively, they were fine. I mean, it wasn't like Wisconsin was doing anything good. Wisconsin did have over 100 yards in the first half, so you could say Wisconsin moved the ball a little bit better, but it's not like they had a great yards per play. They only had 3.5 yards per play. Oregon was 3.7, so you can't really say Wisconsin did well offensively. I guess you could say they did well for them, I suppose, because they were able to pick up some first downs and move the ball down the field. But overall, for Oregon, yeah, not a great first half. 125 yards, only 39 yards rushing, 86 passing yards. Really, really tough first half there. Wisconsin was just doing a really good job with their front seven. I would have liked to see Oregon try to test the secondary of Wisconsin a little bit more deep, but Dante Moore was just kind of throwing some short stuff. There were some passes that went incomplete in critical situations, and Wisconsin had a better pass rush in this game there in the first half as well. What really happened in the second half was the offensive line for Oregon started playing much, much better. I think any time that you're held to only 7 points in the first half against Wisconsin, I think that's concerning. I know Ohio State only scored 17 in the first half against them. Ohio State was also on the road, and Ohio State also had complete dominance of that game, regardless of them not scoring as much. I didn't feel like Oregon had as much dominance. I felt like there was stuff Oregon was trying to do that they just couldn't get done against Wisconsin, and Wisconsin was playing well against them. In the second half, like I said, different story as Oregon was able to score 14 points. Wisconsin got a touchdown late, 210 yards for Oregon, 164 rushing yards, and they really had to lean on the ground game as Dante Moore got hurt. I believe I saw it was a broken nose for him. That could start to impact things if he's not able to play. I assume he probably will still be able to play as long as they can bandage it up, maybe. But we'll have to see for sure. So we'll see what happens there with Dante Moore. But on the day, Dante Moore was 9 of 15, 86 yards passing. And then Jordan Davison had 16 carries, 102 yards, 2 touchdowns. Noah Whittington had a big run, 36 yards. And then on top of that, he had 14 carries. Well, not on top of that. Altogether, he had 14 carries for 97 yards. I think it's a little questionable for Oregon. I'm not going to say concerning or anything like that. But I do think the offensive line did not play as well as they could have in the first half. And I thought this was a game where Oregon would have been able to contend for that best offensive line in the Big Ten if they played well against Wisconsin, especially being at home, but they just weren't able to get it done. Wisconsin was able to stop the run pretty well in the first half, and it really took a toll on Oregon. Eventually, they were able to run it the second half as they kind of wore down Wisconsin. You figured that was going to happen, but overall, tough sledding there. Wisconsin, I'm going to put them in the questionable category. I didn't feel like it was a bad game for Wisconsin. Cade Yakamele only had 3 carries for 16 yards, but Ituka had 21 carries for 85 yards in this game. Hunter Simmons was 7 of 21, 86 yards, a touchdown, and an interception. So it's not like they had a good passing attack or anything, but the fact that Wisconsin was outgaining Oregon for parts of the first half, you have to feel pretty good about that. And you have to feel, like, okay, we have a good defense, right? Like, this isn't the defense that we saw against Ohio State and Iowa that just kind of got punked, right? And when we talked about Iowa before, we said Iowa didn't play all that well on offense. It was more just Wisconsin making bad mistakes than anything else. So you do have a defense that can get you in some games here. You just have to have an offense. And unfortunately, Danny O'Neal, he's not playing right now. Billy Edwards looks like he's not going to play for the rest of the year, I don't think. And if he does come back, it's probably going to be with less than 4 games. So that way he can, I believe, redshirt and come back next year. I'll have to double check that for sure. But yeah, tough stuff here for Wisconsin. it's questionable, but at the end of the day, this is a team that I think everybody knows isn't really going anywhere this season. 2 wins right now, probably maybe 3 wins at the end of the year, but we'll see what happens. All right, let's move on to our last game here. And the final team I'm satisfied with is Rutgers. Satisfied with Rutgers and what they were able to do in this game. You could argue that Purdue had the opportunity to win and they squandered it. It was more on Purdue than anything else, but Rutgers still caused the fumble there at the end. There at the end of the game and was really able to help themselves out there. Ethan Kaliak-Manis had a good day, 359 yards passing, one touchdown pass on the day, 19 of 27. KJ Duff was a monster. 6 receptions, 241 yards, and a touchdown catch on the day. He was targeted 7 times, 73 yards after the catch, as he had a big reception there. And just overall, a good day for this Rutgers passing attack that needed to get back to it. Antoine Raymond, 29 yards, or 29 carries and 116 yards on the ground. Rutgers had over 500 total yards in this game, and they were still there in the end with Purdue, as Purdue was able to kind of capitalize on some stuff, and Rutgers had the missed field goal at one point, and they were able to kind of capitalize there in the second half, as they were able to come back with every single drive in the fourth quarter, touchdown, field goal. It was really refreshing to see for this for this Rutgers team that has struggled so much in the second half this season. But to see them, they had the missed field goal at the beginning. It's like, oh my gosh, and Purdue goes up by 10 points. You get the first half, or you get at the end of the first half, you get like a 17 play, 85-yard drive, and you're thinking, okay, all right, we can make this happen. We can get there. And then what happens at the beginning of the second half? Purdue scores. And it's like, oh my gosh, like there were so many ups and downs of this game. It will not be appreciated by the national people out there, but there were so many ups and downs in this game, and Purdue had an opportunity to win it there late. Ryan Brown, the ball gets tipped into the air. He catches it. He tries to run with it. He fumbles it. Rutgers picks it up there at the very end. I believe there was like a minute left in the game. They just are able, 3 plays, 17 yards, kick the field goal, game over, get the win. And Greg Schiano was, just like beside himself. I shouldn't say beside himself. He like fell to the ground. He was so happy they got the win in that one, and it was really it was one that Rutgers needed, just kind of for the psyche of the team and the program. I think the fans were feeling really down on this team if they weren't going to get able to get it. One of our commenters, Rafe, he said in the comments, he said it's do or die for Rutgers in this one, and it was do or die, and they were able to not die, as he put it, and I think I like the way he did that. So good stuff here from Rutgers. They were able to score right before the first half ended, came out in the second half, punt, touchdown. They had the turnover with the fumble, and then they were able to score in those final 3 drives. Clutch performance by Ethan Kaliak-Manis and those guys on offense. Antoine Raymond, great stuff there. And Purdue, unfortunately, I don't think they're going to have a win in the Big Ten for the rest of the season. Put this in the concerning category. I didn't think it was an awful performance because they had the opportunity to win at the end of the game, but it's definitely concerning that Purdue is not going to get another win in the Big Ten the rest of the season. This was their best opportunity to get it at home against a team that had not had another Big Ten win yet on the season, but Rutgers was able to pull it out, and Purdue is going to be searching for where to go next as Barry Odom tries to figure it out. So we look at the conference odds really fast on FanDuel before we get out of here. Ohio State number 1 at minus 150. That line has moved. Indiana plus 165. Oregon 1,300. Michigan plus 2,500. USC plus 5,500. Iowa plus 12,500. Look, if you're looking for a real dark horse to be able to win the conference, Iowa's your dark horse to do that. Michigan too, because they had an out-of-conference loss as well, so their 2 losses are not in the Big Ten. But Iowa does have the opportunity to play Oregon here. Their only problem is that they require somebody else to beat Ohio State and Indiana, so that way they can be in the tiebreaker scenario and hopefully pass one of those 2 teams, but they're not going to be able to get the head-to-head over them. They can beat Oregon, and that's huge, but they do not control their own destiny at this point. Michigan does control their own destiny at plus 2,500 to win the conference. If they beat Ohio State there at the end of the season, they will have the head-to-head win over them. They won't have the head-to-head win over them because they already lost one early in the season. But if they're able to get that win and Ohio State falls somewhere else, they could possibly get in there and play Indiana there for the conference for the conference championship game. So long shots in those. Definitely your best bet here is Ohio State or Indiana to win it, but just not a whole lot of value in either of those on FanDuel. So, all right, thanks for listening. Thanks for watching. Appreciate you. Have a good one.